Okay, so let's jump right into this. Today, we are looking at a real-life scenario that sounds like it was pulled straight out of a science fiction movie. We are talking about how human beings are literally moving mountains. I mean, physically reshaping the Earth to hold back millions of tons of boiling, unstoppable molten rock.
So we are currently witnessing this absolute epic clash between modern engineering and raw planetary power. And to truly wrap your head around what's happening here, you really need to picture the sheer, terrifying power of the Earth pulling itself apart. You see, Iceland sits right smack on the boundary between two massive tectonic plates, and they are continuously separating. It's like a giant zipper slowly opening on the Earth's crust. And when this happens, magma from deep within the Earth just surges up to the surface. It triggers these massive volcanic eruptions, releasing molten rock that exceeds 1,000 degrees Celsius. Just to give you an idea of how hot that is, it's roughly twice as hot as the surface of Venus. It's hot enough to melt solid aluminum in seconds. Faced with that kind of cataclysmic heat and pressure, humans obviously cannot just extinguish an erupting volcano. It's not a forest fire. So the real question engineers had to ask wasn't how to stop it completely, but rather, can we somehow slow down a natural process that technically cannot be stopped? Like, can we just buy enough time?
And the high-stakes reality of that exact question became devastatingly clear in November 2023. Scientists who were monitoring the Reykjanes Peninsula detected something genuinely terrifying. They found this 15-kilometer-long magma dike spreading underground. It was basically moving like a massive glowing spiderweb right beneath the surface, and it was stretching directly toward the town of Grindavik. The warning signs leading up to this were just cinematic in their scale. GPS stations were measuring a staggering 40 centimeters of ground uplift in just a matter of days as the magma pushed upward. Imagine your entire neighborhood just lifting up almost half a meter. On top of that, earthquakes were hitting every few minutes, literally cracking the streets open and tilting people's houses. Authorities had absolutely no choice. They had to order a full, immediate evacuation, giving 3,800 residents mere hours to pack whatever essentials they could grab and just flee a volcano that had been dormant for 800 years.
Now, when you look at the mapping of where these volcanic systems were waking up, you really start to understand the desperate, agonizing choice the authorities were facing. Because this threat wasn't just aimed at the town itself, it was heading straight for the Svartsengi geothermal power plant. And this plant is absolutely critical. It provides heat and electricity to over 30,000 residents, not to mention Iceland's main international airport. So if the lava were to reach this facility, it wouldn't just be a localized tragedy. The entire daily infrastructure serving tens of thousands of people would be completely crippled overnight.
So what did they do? Well, the solution they arrived at was just staggering in its sheer scale. Over the course of 6 months, workers managed to move more than 3 million cubic meters of earth. To put that massive number into a more relatable perspective, that is enough dirt to fill more than 1,000 Olympic swimming pools. All of that material was used to form 7 kilometers of these massive, continuous earthen barriers. And remember, they didn't do this on a sunny spring afternoon. They had to build this in brutal, freezing winter conditions, working around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all while sitting right in the middle of a constant earthquake swarm, essentially racing against the molten magma that was actively rising directly beneath their feet.
Now you might actually be wondering, why dirt? Why didn't engineers use something super strong like reinforced concrete or steel for these protective barriers? And the answer to that really lies in how lava actually behaves in the real world. Think about it. When you're trying to stop water, you absolutely need watertight concrete, right? Because water will find any tiny crack and seep right through it. But lava is entirely different. It behaves way more like incredibly heavy, highly viscous tar. It doesn't really seep into the soil at all. It just lazily, heavily flows across the surface. And its path is dictated purely by gravity and the shape of the terrain. So the engineers realized pretty quickly that they didn't need any exotic, expensive materials or complex foundation work. They just needed extreme height and sheer, stubborn mass to fight gravity and literally force the lava to change its direction.
And the math behind these massive dirt walls? It is a total masterpiece of pragmatic, high-stakes engineering. This design was created by Verkís, which is the Icelandic engineering firm that led this entire massive project. These barriers aren't just little hills. They are a massive 40 meters wide at the base. That's nearly half the length of an American football field, just for the base of the wall. They stand 8 to 10 meters tall, and they have this flat top that's at least 4 meters wide. Now, the side of the wall that actually faces the lava is intentionally built with a very steep slope, and they keep it as smooth as possible to encourage the flow to slide right past. And the entire mass of this huge structure is mathematically calculated specifically to absorb the immense physical pressure and the crushing dead weight of that advancing molten rock.
Of course, Building something of this magnitude required mobilizing a fleet of heavy, earth-moving machinery that you rarely see assembled in one single place. We're talking about absolute beasts like Komatsu 375s, Liebherr 776s, and Caterpillar D11s. And the actual construction process, it is incredibly brutal work. These giant bulldozers use these massive ripper teeth to literally fracture and tear apart old, thick basalt rock that had cooled from ancient eruptions. Think about that for a second. They are essentially cannibalizing the old, hardened lava from centuries ago to fight the new, active eruption. It's kind of poetic. So they crush this old rock, push it into these massive piles, and then load it onto these huge, articulated dump trucks. Then it gets transported to the barrier site, dumped, and meticulously compacted down, layer by layer, just 1 meter at a time, until this massive wall is built.
But here's the thing. They aren't just piling up dirt blindly and hoping for the best. These engineers are essentially playing a super high-stakes game of chess against gravity. And to do that, they use a highly advanced fluid dynamics software called HECRAS. Because the terrain is literally changing day by day with each new eruption, they have digital drones constantly flying over the area, mapping the topography in real time. Then they take that 3D map and plug in specific variables into the software. They input the lava's estimated viscosity, basically figuring out if it's acting more like warm, runny honey or thick, cold syrup. They input the yield stress. Now, yield stress is basically the exact amount of shove it takes to get this heavy, sticky rock to actually start moving in the first place. When they combine all that with the estimated flow rates from where the scientists think the fissures might actually open up, this software allows them to simulate exactly how the lava is going to behave. It tells them exactly where those barriers need to be placed to successfully intercept the flow.
And let me tell you, this high-stakes chess game really paid off. When you actually compare the software's predicted flow paths against the mapped boundaries of the real-world lava once the eruption happened, it is wild. The simulation was incredibly accurate. These computer models totally proved their worth in the real world, showing us that these massive, hastily built dirt walls actually grabbed this unstoppable force of nature and successfully diverted the lava away from the critical infrastructure, guiding it safely right past the town.
Now, it's really important to note that this level of success absolutely didn't just happen overnight. We can actually trace Iceland's evolving understanding of lava control over several decades. If we go way back to 1973, during the famous Heimaey eruption, they literally pumped 7.3 million cubic meters of freezing cold seawater directly onto an advancing lava flow just to cool it down and save their vital harbor. Wild, right? Then fast forward to 2021. There was a relatively harmless eruption kind of out in the middle of nowhere at Fagradalsfjall, and that gave engineers the perfect, low-stakes chance to test out these modern dirt barriers. That practice run was absolutely crucial. It gave them the exact real-world data they desperately needed for when the 2023 Grindavik emergency hit, and it continues to inform the active, ongoing wall reinforcements they're doing all throughout 2024.
However, humans don't always win this arms race against nature. On January 14, 2024, at about 5:30 in the morning, a truly devastating event happened that revealed the one fundamental limitation of these lava barriers. So the main wall was doing its job. It was successfully diverting that primary lava flow away from the town. But then a secondary fissure suddenly tore open. And the worst part? It opened up inside the protective barrier perimeter. It split the ground right at the very edge of Grindavik. Because it was already past the wall, the molten rock just flowed directly into a residential neighborhood and completely consumed 3 houses. It was a really harsh, humbling reminder you can absolutely redirect lava once it's up on the surface, but you absolutely cannot control where the earth decides to split open beneath you. And that tragic reality brings us to a really brutal economic calculation. The sheer cost of this barrier project ballooned from 6 billion to 11 billion Icelander krona. And while that money was being spent, Grindavik's population plummeted. It went from a thriving town of 3,800 residents down to about 70 people, and those are mostly just essential workers. Naturally, the property values there have totally tanked, plunging down to just 10% of their original worth. So it raises a seriously agonizing question for the government and the people. Is it actually worth spending tens of millions of euros to continuously build walls around a town that is now mostly abandoned and realistically might be entirely uninhabitable for decades? Now, for the Svartsengi power plant, which keeps 30,000 homes powered and heated, the math there absolutely makes sense. You have to protect that. But for the empty town itself, finding the justification for that expense is much, much harder.
But even despite those staggering financial costs and the genuinely devastating property losses, the experts really stand firm on the value of these efforts. Professor Sigurdur Storthur, I think, really hit the nail on the head when she summarized it. She said, "The main lesson we learned was that it is possible to control lava flows to some extent,
And it is certainly worth trying when it comes to protecting civilization and critical infrastructure. Because the truth is, humans cannot ever defeat a volcano with absolute force. We just don't have the power. But buying time to evacuate people safely, to protect our critical energy grids, and to preserve whatever we can, that isn't just an option, it's an absolute necessity.
And you know, this whole story, it really isn't just a story about destruction. It's actually a massive testament to incredible human resilience. The people of Iceland, they don't just stubbornly fight the lava, they actually adapt to it, and they figure out how to turn this massive hazard into an opportunity. For example, following past eruptions, they've literally engineered ways to extract geothermal heat straight from the cooling lava flows to heat people's homes. They take the airborne volcanic material, called tephra, and they use it as an aggregate to extend their airport runways. And looking at a global scale, we know that volcanic slopes eventually offer this incredibly rare, mineral-rich soil that is absolutely perfect for growing lush vineyards. But my favorite thing? Right now, architects in Reykjavik are actually actively researching a concept called lava forming. They are literally trying to figure out how to harness molten lava directly from trenches to essentially 3D print sustainable building materials. I mean, come on, that is sci-fi level genius. They aren't just surviving the fire, they are learning to live with it.
So ultimately, this whole ongoing crazy battle really forces us to rethink the true nature of climate resilience, doesn't it? Because it's clearly not about finding a single permanent fix that solves the problem forever. It's about a continuous, incredibly humbling adaptation to a natural world that simply does not negotiate with us. The scientists forecast that these specific volcanic systems are going to be active for up to 3 centuries. 300 years! So the walls are going to keep getting higher, and the volcano is going to keep erupting. And so, knowing all of this, I've just got to leave you with this one haunting question. Would you live in a town that is protected by nothing but massive dirt walls, knowing that the earth could literally split open and lava could break through at any given moment?